just talk to you this way.
Morning, Dr. Constant. Thank you for bearing with us through our technical difficulties. As you know, this is a live IG
Yeah.
feed, and technology is not always in our favor.
No, it isn't. It's so terrible, but I'm here and I'm so happy to join you
Well,
today.
thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. We are a few minutes late, so we're just going to dive right in because we
Okay.
always do our IG live in under 30 minutes because we are all very busy
Yeah.
mamas with things to do. And the idea is that you can take 30 minutes out of nursing or driving across town to drop off your kids at school and be able to get some valuable information, maybe even a laugh. So, with that said, let's get started and please give us a brief description of yourself.
Well, so my name is Scarlet Constant. I'm a born and raised Miami girl. I went to Gables High School and then went off to college in Boston. And my story kind of just takes me all over the place. I went from Boston to London to New York, and then finally back home in Florida to complete my pediatric residency. And I always wanted to move back home because I really wanted to practice in my hometown. I wanted to be part of my community again. I wanted to give back to my community. So I always knew that no matter where I went to school and where I trained and where I lived as a young adult, I wanted to come home to Miami and just come back to my community. um, as you know, we tend to have our strong roots here. I'm from a Haitian family and I have my Haitian roots here. And it was really important for me to not only give back, but also, be a role model to young people in my community. So here I am in Miami. I'm married with two beautiful children, Gabriela, who is 10, Santiago, my son, who is 8. And we are really happy here and they're very proud of their mom because I recently opened up my own practice. I was with a big group for about 10 years, and a year ago I broke away and decided I wanted to do something on my own.
Many,
So I opened up my own private practice here in Miami.
that sounds wonderful. Many congrats to you. Are you currently taking new?
Yeah. Yes, I am. I'm currently taking new patients. And, the unique thing about my practice is that I am what is called a boutique private practice. So this means I definitely take insurance. I follow the same protocols. I don't do a fee for service, but I don't overbook my patients. I give everybody the time that they need, the time that they deserve. And we keep it very small, very low volume here. So you could always see me. Anybody can call and get an appointment when they want to be seen. I just keep it nice and quiet over here. So I really want parents to feel that they have a doctor who not only knows what they're doing and can treat their child, but is listening to them. I think that's the most important thing as parents is we really want to feel heard. And we kind of lost a little bit of that in medicine. So I'm trying to bring it back with my practice.
That's wonderful because I mean, I'm the first one to say I hate sitting and waiting in the lobby.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm just dreading that a kid or a mom is going to cough on me and I'm going to get sick too.
I know.
Kids.
And and then you walk in and then you're rushed in the room and you feel like you just don't even remember
You
what
feel like,
happened. You were in and out.
and then you walk out of there and you're like, what just happened? And why didn't I get my prescription? How am I going to deal with this? So that
Mhm.
whole thing that you take time for your parents and for your children and allow the mom, I'm assuming, to be in the room and vocalize as well, correct?
Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Today we want to talk about all things summer related, Dr.
Yeah.
Khan. My children are about to embark on summer camp, and I want to know. Well, my very first concern is Miami's getting hotter and hotter every day, and I don't think my kids drink enough water.
Right. Okay, so I don't think any of us drink enough water, first of all. I think that it's it's terrible. Everybody's kind of stuck in their routine. You have your cup of coffee in the morning and then you're running out the door and sure you have a water bottle that you sip throughout the day, but are we really getting what we should? Typically, at least for the kids, an active child should have anywhere from 6 to 8 8-ounce glasses of water a day. So that's about 64 ounces of water. And that's just to maintain that day. But you really need to think that, especially in a city like Miami, in this climate that we're living in, and with our children being so active, you start every day just a little bit dehydrated. So the key is to really hydrate the day before. It's important for us to encourage our kids not only to drink with dinner, but maybe even another glass of water not right before bed, but in the evening, because you want to get ahead of the next day. The next day, you're inherently going to be dehydrated with the heat, with PE at school, and then not drinking nearly as much as they would if they were home. So I encourage hydrating the day before. I encourage drinking all day and then hydrating again once you get home because you were already just sweating and kind of evaporating that water throughout the day. So we need to hydrate again once we get home. Some people think you need to hydrate while you're active, but it's just as important after you're active.
I'm going to be throwing in some true or false questions that pop into my head. Go along with
Okay.
that with you. True or false? Gatorade is just as effective as water.
Okay. True and false.
Oh,
No, so Gatorade Gatorade is definitely effective because it does have electrolytes. And the important thing about having electrolytes is it allows your body to absorb the water because it's essentially salt. Water is isotonic, meaning whatever you put in, you usually will just void. So Gatorade is great because it does have electrolytes and your body will hold onto the fluids. However, the idea is you want Gatorade zero because Gatorade does have sugar. And you definitely want to minimize the amount of sugar if you're trying to hydrate. So maybe G0, yes, or Pedialyte.
oh, Pedialyte. I love Pedialyte.
Pedialyte is
um,
the
I
best.
love the popsicles actually because they're very refreshing in the summer as well.
Yes, and they're a great idea. I always keep them in my house.
Great to know. Heat stroke versus heat exhaustion, and what are the symptoms we should be looking for?
Okay. Okay, so heat exhaustion is when your body temperature is starting to rise, okay? And so when you start to have this rise in body temperature, you're going to feel a little clammy, you're going to have a little bit of tachycardia, meaning your heart is racing fast, you feel nauseous, dizzy, and that's an alert that your body is starting to overheat and you need to stop what you're doing, you need to drink some fluids, you need to, if the signs are getting worse, you call 911, but in the most, you really want to just make sure that you're taking little sips of water, not a lot of water, because with the nausea, you'll vomit right away. So sips of water, cooling off, go to a shaded place and calm down. Heat stroke is now you've already reached that maximum temperature, which is called hyperthermia. It's not like a fever. A fever is when your thermostat in your brain is elevated and it allows your body temperature to rise to fight infection. So it's kind of a controlled response. Heat stroke, your body is not allowing this. You would just completely overheat without your body compensating. So now you're not sweating. Your body is not performing all of the normal mechanisms to cool you off. And at this point, it's an emergency and you don't want to give water to these patients. You call 911 right away and it's a medical emergency.
Okay. I think somebody would just immediately grab a water bottle and start trying to
Right.
hydrate their. So we do the opposite.
Right. If it's a heat stroke, absolutely. This is a person with 104 temperature, they're shaking and they look sick. So we usually especially in pediatrics and here in Miami, we see a lot of heat exhaustion.
Okay, great. That's very important. And that was my number one question because I worry that we want to send our kids outside to play and not keep them indoors with
Right.
technology. But then it's that, okay, they're going to go outside, but it's too hot. And then you see them all red and clammy. And then you don't know if they're playing chicken or not because they want to come in.
Right. Right.
And
Absolutely. I think it's in moderation also. Our kids are not out for 10 hours of the day. Playing outside, making sure that they have their sunblock, they have a hat on, they know when to go in the shade and pop back out and take a break. I mean, it's fine. They could totally stay outside and play. I think the biggest problem is when, it's 8 to 10 hours outside without cooling off and maybe like heavy, if they're in sports or something and they're wearing padded uniforms or a lot of equipment, then that's a different story and I would be concerned. But I think just like playing outside in our yard and, low level activities, they should be just fine.
fantastic. So here's another true or false question for you. True or false? The higher the SPF, the more protection you're getting.
Okay, so true and false. So
Okay.
yes, you are getting more protection, SPF 30 versus SPF 5, absolutely. But after 30, it's kind of just a plateau. So anywhere from 30 to 50 is totally fine. There's no reason to go to 80 and all these numbers. Anything after 30 is just fine.
Okay, so the 110 SPF that you assume is the safest one. Not necessarily so.
No.
Anything after is a gimmick.
But I wouldn't call it a gimmick, but yes, it's just it's not more effective, and studies have not shown it to be more effective.
Okay. And what sun protection do you recommend, especially for someone who has an allergic child with eczema or dermatitis?
Yes. So it's important to know the difference actually between a mineral sunscreen and a chemical sunscreen. So a chemical sunscreen are the most popular ones. So those are the ones that we love that are thin, they go on smooth and silky, and they're not too sticky. They feel great. However, a chemical sunscreen actually absorbs the UV light. And that's not what you want. You want a mineral sunscreen, which is a physical sunscreen, and it actually repels the UV light. And it's going to have, for a child that's atopic, like you're mentioning, or has dry skin or eczema, you'd want a sunscreen that actually has ceramides so that you could restore the skin, you can still hydrate the skin, and you're going to repel the UV light. So La Roche-Posay, which is one of my favorites, they're a line at CVS and Target. They create really lovely sunscreens, and I think their SPF is maybe like 60. They all just standard come in at SPF 60, and they are mineral sunscreen. CeraVe has one as well, and they're just lovely for kids. It doesn't cause an allergic reaction. It goes on nicely. It doesn't have any chemicals that might, cause a little bit of burning or itching. So those are great sunscreens to use during the summer. And you want to reapply at least every 2 hours if that's possible, especially if you're going into the water.
Water, will water rub it off?
It does. Some of them are water repellent and so they stay on longer, but it definitely washes off a bit. So you do want to try to reapply water and sweat.
We have a question from a mama, and please bring in your questions. Now is the time. We have Dr. Constant here with us for the next 30 minutes. I encourage the questions, especially since I walked in so flustered today from dropping off my daughter and literally sitting down 10 minutes ago. We have a question saying, do rash guards work, or should we apply sunscreen under the rash guard?
Definitely apply sunscreen under the rash guard. The rash guard is protective and it's great, but you still get UV through the clothing.
And the clothing, we see rash guards on like at the Target, and we see them at Walmart, and they say SPF 30, SPF 50. Is that equivalent to the sunscreen, or is that also written there for sales?
Right. It's equivalent to the sunscreen. Again, it's just because studies didn't actually go into every single number, but it's equivalent. As long as you have some type of protection for the external wear, you should be just fine with 30 or 50.
And do hats come now with the SPF protection as well?
Some do. I have seen that, not so common. The important thing with the hat is to make sure you get the brim that is going to cover the ears and the back of the neck.
I think a lot of people forget to apply on the neck and ears.
Oh my gosh. That's the number one spot for skin cancer is the back of the ear and the neck.
Dr. Constant, my daughter wears braids and she burns the middle of her head.
Oh
is there a good sunscreen for the scalp?
No, basically La Roche-Posay and Blue Lizard and CeraVe, all of those can also be applied to the scalp just as well.
Okay, so right now we've already discussed sun protection and hydration. Now I wanted to move over to insect bites and stings.
My favorite.
I'm sure you see a lot of it. What is your favorite insect repellent?
Okay, so I say this is my favorite because I am one of the, there are two types of people. One that can sit in a room with like 20 mosquitoes and they don't even notice the mosquitoes are there. And then there are people like me, there's one mosquito in the room and I'm the one being bitten by it.
Yeah.
So I really take a special interest in mosquito repellents and what to do. I recommend in the summertime, especially here in Miami, I recommend off with DEET. I know it's really strong, but the problem is those guys in the summer, end of July, August, they are big, they are resistant, and they'll bite through anything. So I really like to use off as much as I can with DEET. It's safe for kids. It's safe for kids under the age of 2, actually. So we don't need to be afraid. It is not harmful. And it really does repel the mosquitoes. And then in the season in the fall, when the mosquitoes are just a little less prevalent, I use a cream called No Bite Me. It's really awesome. It's made out of lemongrass and citronella, and it's just all natural substances that will like repel the bugs away from landing on you. And it's actually soothing once you get a bite. You can put it on, but it's easier. It doesn't have as much chemical, and it smells nice. So I actually put that on my kids every day to go to school because, as you know, they go to a school that has no-see-ums and mosquitoes. So they put that on every day to go to school. And then in the summer, I'll switch to off where it's a little bit stronger.
We're having a question from Mrs. Vega 2023, and it's asking, what about for infants?
For infants, so actually for infants, the no bite me is a great, solution because like I said, it's just citronella and lemongrass. And they also have a couple of like Honest and California Baby. They do have insect repellent. And again, they're just composed of those plants so that the smell will repel the bugs. And I suggest also, like if you have an infant that's in the stroller, there are mosquito nets that are UV and bug repellent. So you put that over the stroller so that the mosquitoes don't get in and bite them when they're in the stroller. Usually when they're strapped in is when they get bitten the most. So you really want to protect them from that. But you can certainly put those natural creams and sprays on them. And I actually used to even put it on the clothes of my babies. Like when they were infants, I would just spray it on the clothes if I didn't want to touch their skin. And that way it just keeps the bugs from swarming around them.
That's a great idea. We're having a question from Norleen 90. Would no bite be good for a 1-year-old who has eczema?
Yes, it's perfectly fine. And actually, with no bite, you don't have to smear it all over the body. I actually put it just on a couple pressure points because, again, this is really just a smell that's repelling them. So I just put it on a few points. So if you know that your child has eczema or maybe gets a little irritated, you can just put it on a few spots, the neck, the wrists, the elbows, and they'll be just fine. But no bite me is fine for eczema.
It's almost like the perfume marks for women,
Yes.
right? Behind, under
Yep.
the wrist. Hey, that's a great thing to consider. What if you have an allergic reaction to a bug bite? What do you recommend?
Right. So there are different gradients of the allergic reaction. The most common I want to discuss first because I get a lot of patients call me about this. Under the age of about 3, the children have an exaggerated histamine response to insect bites or to mosquito bites, rather. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're allergic to the mosquito bite. They're just having an exaggerated reaction. So the histamine response is to swell and turn red. So you'll see a baby that gets like a bite on their wrist and the whole hand is swollen, or they'll get a bite right here on the eyebrow and the eye is swollen and their eye is swollen shut. That's normal under the age of 3. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have a frank allergy to mosquitoes. What I always recommend is you see where the head of the bite is and you put hydrocortisone right at the tip, right at the head of the bite. The hydrocortisone cream is going to shrink down that swelling, decrease the histamine response, and help with the itching. And I would put that on twice a day, every day until the reaction goes down. Now, if you're truly allergic to mosquito bites and you have a couple of bites, you probably want to take Benadryl just because the itching and the redness and the swelling is probably unbearable. So I would give oral Benadryl and again use the hydrocortisone cream. Wherever you have a bite, you just dab the cream on it to shrink down the swelling
I,
and the redness.
I want to give you another true or false question that just popped into my head. True or false? Benadryl will put you to sleep or make you hyper?
Oh, again, you love these. It's true and
Okay.
false. Benadryl absolutely causes drowsiness, 100%, and which is why I don't recommend that parents give it to their kids before going to school. There is a small population of people who have an opposite response to the Benadryl. We don't know if it's a genetic predisposition or what is really causing it, but there are children that if you give them Benadryl, you will have the complete opposite response. So I would try it in your child first before you give it to them before school or something like that. You want to see how your child reacts to it.
Thank you for answering that.
Mhm.
Um, Before we jump into the next topic, Put You First wants to know, what multivitamin do you recommend for your kids?
So multivitamins they're a little tricky. I think it's great to be in the habit of giving your children vitamins and supplements and eating well, but truly, the American Academy of Pediatrics and most pediatricians do not recommend multivitamins, not because they're harmful. It's just not needed at all. If your child has a balanced diet, they're just fine. The only thing that you're really missing from a normal balanced diet, the only thing that we're really missing in a first world country is we definitely, all of us, even as adults, do not get nearly the amount of fiber that we're supposed to get in a normal diet. I think we're supposed to have something like 15 grams per day, and like none of us do that. So fiber is what's missing, and omega-3. So omega-3 is so important. And because we're, a population that doesn't really consume so much fish or fatty fish, we tend to not get enough fatty acid as well. So if anything, I would say maybe omega-3 pills, or as the Latin and Caribbean people know, aceite de bacalao, that is like numero uno. That's what you want. You want fatty fish
There you
oil.
go. Spoken from a Miami mama herself. For
We
those,
drank that thing until she was 12. Disgusting.
there you go. For those of us just joining in, you may already know or not know, we had technical difficulties this morning signing on. Apart from the fact that I was late getting home from dropping off my daughter at school. So we started the morning a little flustered and a little late. We are going to go over 9:30 today, if that's okay with Dr. Constant,
That's fine.
because we have a couple more questions we want to ask her. We've already discussed sun protection, hydration, and mosquito bites. I'm
Hmm.
really big on this. Swimming and water safety, Dr. Constant.
Yeah.
Um, what precautions should I take to ensure my child is safe around the water?
Okay. So I want to start by saying that most drownings occur in the presence of adults. And it's important to say that because I think all of us have said, well, I'm here, go ahead. I'm here, I'm watching, things are fine, there's a parent. And, we tend to be very relaxed. I think especially as Miamians, we've all been around the water forever. We take it for granted. Our kids have been in pools since they were infants, and we all kind of just get a little bit relaxed when it comes to that. I think the most important thing is to know that you have a responsible adult that's actively watching the kids. They need to be there and watching the children. Decrease the amount of alcohol that's around. A lot of people sit around, have a beer here and there, pass it around. It's important for someone to be responsible, be sober, and watching the kids. I think that our older children, as long as we're present, that's fine. But the younger children, we need to still have the pool gate. That is so important to have a pool gate. So many things happen in the blink of an eye. A kid gets by the pool, they fall in, and we don't even notice. So the pool gate is essential until your child's about 5 or 6. But with the older kids, we just need to make sure that we are there, we are cognizant, and we are actively monitoring them in the water.
True or false? Even if you think your child can swim at 3 or 4, do you still have your pool fence up?
Absolutely true.
For once, it wasn't true and false.
Right? That was a
Yeah.
good one.
At what age do you recommend swimming lessons, and how do you choose a good program? I know that this was very huge for me when my son, who's now 12, was 2, and he learned the swim, float, swim method.
Right, right. So studies have shown that effective swim lessons are after the age of 1. The idea is some schools will promote, we can prevent drowning, we'll teach your child how to swim, it'll be survival. They're under the age of 1, the children are learning reflexive swimming. So that means they'll paddle, they'll move the arms, they'll kick the feet, they'll do everything that they should, which looks like they're swimming, which is great, but that's a reflex. They are not strong enough and coordinated enough to keep their head above water and keep themselves safe to not drown. So the recommendation is after the age of 1. And what's most important is a school that will assess your child's mental capabilities, physical capabilities, and emotional maturity. And if they can do that and teach the child according to what they're able to accomplish, then that's great. But to sell the idea that your child will not drown is a farce. So I think it's important to keep that in consideration when choosing a school.
That's so important. I know that there's a big difference between swimming lessons and survival swim.
Right. Exactly.
So that's the first question to ask a swim program, I would assume.
Exactly. Because you want swim lessons. You want a child that's going to learn how to swim. Survival is, it's a false sense of security.
That's great to know. With them being in the pool so often, what do you recommend for swimmer's ear, and how do you know the signs of swimmer's ear and how to prevent it? This was the bane of my existence when my kids were little. They always had ear infections. Of course, I'm sure other mothers can attest, the pain is always at night.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're fine all day, having a blast. Yeah.
Until the office.
Right, right. So swimmer's ear. Okay, this is basically an overgrowth of fungus in the external part of the ear. Okay, so what happens is their ears are always wet. They're wet for days on end. They don't really get very dry, and that promotes the environment for fungus to grow in the canal. And then what happens is there's swelling in the canal, and so your child will feel it when they lay down to go to bed. They're calm, endorphins are down, they're relaxing, and then you feel the throbbing pain. Really, swimmer's ear, the only sign is pain, and pain when you actually touch the outer ear. If you touch it or move it, it actually hurts very badly. And you might even, as a parent, be able to smell it because it is a fungal overgrowth. And in the event that your child does have swimmer's ear, they would be seen by their pediatrician and prescribed drops because it's an external infection. So you just want a topical remedy. Now, how do we prevent it? So there are two different ways that I recommend preventing this from happening. Number one, when you get out of the pool and your kids complain that they can't get the water out or they're trying to dry their ear and they kind of feel it still, you can put 1 or 2 drops of rubbing alcohol in each ear canal, and that'll just evaporate the water. Right there, their ears are dry. So that's a definite way to ensure that your kid's ears dry all day and they're going to bed with dry ears. Now, if you're going on vacation and you know you're going to be in the pool every single day, several times a day, and you just know they're always going to be wet, what you can do is every other day or maybe twice a week, you could put 2 or 3 drops of vinegar in the ear. And that's just going to alter the pH of the ear so that there is not a stable environment for the fungus to overgrow. So those are mom
Let's
hacks.
specify the vinegar, shall we? Not the red wine vinegar in the pantry. We're talking about white distilled vinegar,
That's
correct?
right. White distilled vinegar. Yes.
Okay, we have a question from Magdy24. If your child is battling an ear infection, should they avoid the pool?
Yes. If it's an inner ear infection and they're taking antibiotics, yes. Now the reason to avoid the pool though is not what everybody thinks. They're worried about water getting into the ear. That's not the concern. The inner ear infection is coming from your sinuses. So you have drainage of mucus, it drains into the ear canal, causing the accumulation of fluid in the ear canal and the infection. So if you're going in the pool and swimming, what happens? We constantly get nasal drainage, right? We get a stuffy nose, we have mucus. So then if it keeps draining into that ear canal, you're complicating the infection. So I always advise against swimming until they're completely cured for that reason.
Oh, moguls.
Mocos.
Moguls. So here's a true or false question for you. I don't know about the Haitian grandmothers, but the old Cuban grandmothers would put olive oil in kids' ears to stop the ear from hurting in the middle of the
Yeah.
night when they have the pediatrician. Is that safe to
Yeah.
do?
Yes. It's and it I think they warm it. I think they warm it and put it in, which is, a little risky because you want to make sure they don't heat it up too hot and burn you. But yes, the mineral oil is soothing and it relieves the pain. It doesn't do anything medically for the infection, but it definitely alleviates the pain.
Olive oil, not avocado oil, not sesame oil, not canola,
Right.
correct?
Mineral oil, actually.
Mineral oil. Okay. Wonderful to know. Noted for all the Cuban grandmothers out there. I'm
Well,
gonna
if you're Haitian, then it's going to be l'huile masquetie. We have a special oil from a heart of palm that smells disgusting, but we use that. So you pour that in there.
Does it do the trick?
Yeah.
Good to know. Um, I'm gonna hit one last topic. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to all of them today, but with that said, travel health. The news is reporting that we've never seen more travel than we are today, especially post-COVID. Attached to the ears, when is it safe to fly with an ear infection with a child?
Okay, so again, with the ear infection, inner ear infection, you have the accumulation of fluid in the ear canal. So the first couple days of the ear infection, when they really have symptoms and it's full, it hurts like crazy. So I certainly wouldn't, if you can avoid it, I would not get on a plane. But I would say after like 4 days or so on active treatment for the ear infection, and if your child is symptom free, usually they should be just fine, and the fluid should already be diminishing, so they should not feel the pressure in the ear. I mean, every child is different and they have different levels of pain tolerance, but usually you should be okay at least 4 days in of treatment.
True or false? Do you give a baby a bottle on the airplane to avoid the pain of the ear pressure?
Yes. So it's interesting with that one. Babies don't really have developed sinuses that we have. They don't have all of the full sinuses that we have. So they're not going to get as much pain as people are concerned that they're going to have, especially like this ear pain, like that sinus development is much later in life. But yes, the sucking actually helps them and soothes them so they don't feel the pressure change. And so yes, bottle on takeoff and bottle on descent.
I wish I knew that when my kids were little. Medicine bags. My husband has been making fun of me since the day he met me because my medicine bag is larger than my luggage. What do
Yeah.
we what do we pack for our kiddos in our medicine bags when we're
Right. So, the pediatrician's medicine bag doesn't exist. I don't pack anything, but I do think it's a great idea. I think the most important thing I think is Motrin and Tylenol because you never know when they're going to spike a fever. They spike it at the most random times. It'll be just like fine all day and then all of a sudden all the stores are closed, they're home about to go to bed and boom, fever. And then you don't know what to do. So I love having Tylenol and Motrin on hand just in case. Other than that, I don't really, in Band-Aids, the pool, skinning the toes, pain. So Band-Aids, Neosporin, Motrin, Tylenol, those are for your little injuries that happen day to day that you really don't need to go see a physician for, right? So I like to have that on hand. Anything more important than that, such as antibiotics and things, I really like to wait and just see a physician first before I would ever prescribe. So those are the things that I like to have on hand. Band-Aids, Neosporin, Motrin, Tylenol, and maybe depending on where you're going, what type of trip it is, I would ask your pediatrician for Zofran, which is an anti-nausea medication. And I think that really saves a lot of people, from vomiting and dehydration from vomiting.
Somebody had just put, what about something for vomiting?
Yeah,
Is
I know.
going to
I know.
Caribbean
Zofran.
or, someone, us being Miamians going to the islands. Quick story, my brother, who I love and adore, on his wedding night, he got married in the Bahamas. He had food poisoning from his wedding,
Oh,
and he the
God.
whole night vomiting his wedding night. And if it wasn't for a doctor that was invited to his wedding who gave him Zofran, he probably would have ended up in the hospital.
Yes.
They didn't. Actually, my mother, and she's laughing and she's saying yes because
Yeah.
brother spent his wedding night with his brand new bride and my mom because he couldn't stop vomiting from his wedding night. It was horrible.
Terrible. It's my nightmare. That's a good one because honestly, you don't want to have to go to an ER with your kid when you're out of town just to get IV fluids when you might have been able to prevent it just taking a dose of Zofran. So, I prescribe it to my patients when they call me and ask for it before a trip. I give them a couple to take with them.
That's wonderful information to have. Is there any vaccines in preparation for the upcoming year? I know that there's certain age levels, Dr.
Yes,
Constant, where you have vaccines to come into the next school year, and those are probably the people that need to start preparing their doctor's appointments.
right.
What age levels?
Okay, so after age 4, there aren't any required vaccines for school. So aside from your regular flu shot every season, there's nothing that you need to worry about. The flu vaccine is usually offered September, October. So your pediatrician will probably start to send you some memos this summer to come in the fall and get it. But the next age group is going to be your 11-year-olds. And so everybody calls it the 7th grade shots because in 7th grade they ask for the documentation, but truly here in the office we give it at age 11. You'll get your tetanus booster, your meningitis vaccine, and then your Gardasil vaccine, which is the vaccine against human papillomavirus. So you get those 3 at age 11, and that will have you prepared to enter 7th grade with your immunization forms. After that, the next round is at 16, and those are just boosters.
One last true or false for you. Gardasil is only for girls. True or false?
Absolutely false. That was back in 2005, and it hasn't been that way since.
And I think a lot of us don't realize that because maybe we were the last generation that was just, it was an optional for us, and now it's mandatory, correct?
So remember, vaccines are not mandatory anywhere. They're strongly recommended, and it's, obviously for, health reasons, we offer it and we recommend it, but they're not mandated. The Gardasil vaccine is included in the 11-year-old vaccine series, and it is for both sexes, male and female, because it does protect against cervical cancer, anal rectal cancer, and head and neck cancer, those 4, which both genders can get. So it is recommended, and it's in 2 doses. If you get it by the age of 11, you can get it in 2 doses. If you take it after the age of 15, we have to give it in 3 separated doses.
Dr. Constant, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you
You're
for going
welcome.
for us. We apologize for the technical difficulties. Once again, live IG, things happen. Will you please come back on and talk to us about, drop your knowledge with any other information, please?
I'd love to. I'd love to. I look forward to doing this again, and I'll jump on without any technical difficulties.
Wonderful. Thank you. Everybody have a great day.
Have a great day. Bye.